take the time in this video to talk a little bit about edges. And edges, I feel like, is something that can be overlooked or something that is kind of brushed aside on. But to me, edges can make or break a painting. And we're going to look at 4 paintings today, digital and traditional oil and gouache paintings, to kind of analyze how these different artists use a variety of edges to make their paintings work. And each painting is so unique. Now, I am demoing this on Adobe Photoshop, and to me, when you're painting digitally, edges are very much tied to the brushes that we use, and this is my opinion. So, for example, if I have a certain brush that is very graphic, right, it might give me a very hard edge on the side. You can see all the edges are very crisp and graphic, right? Maybe if we take another brush that gives you a sort of still a very firm opaque shape, but you can see it's kind of grungier at the sides, right? So it gives a little bit of a more textured edge. Edges and texture to me are a little bit tied as well in digital painting, because every brush gives you different edge quality and also different texture. So you can see this one has a little bit slightly different edge quality, and if I press lighter, right, it actually gives me almost I would say a firmer edge, not so much a hard edge as the first one we put down. Okay, so here, if I just choose another brush, you can see that now we have a firm edge, but it's definitely not as solid as the first edge that we put down. Okay, and if I just play through the other another brush, all these variety of brushes give you definitely, this is kind of a firmer edge. If we maybe go to something, I'm trying to think, maybe this might start to give me a softer edge, right here. So from here to here, we've gotten some really different edges, right? All playing around with these different brushes. And if we have a lost edge, right, which we go from hard, firm, soft, and lost, it's like we can barely see the edge, or like we can't even distinguish the edge between two shapes. So I just demonstrated that by choosing 2 different colors to show that you can't really see where the boundary of the purple swatch starts and then where the start of the pink swatch starts, right? So there's so much to go into edges, but that's just a really quick basic overview. And again, if you're new to Photoshop or any other digital painting app, I encourage you to just play around with brushes, because a lot of times that's where all the fun comes. Now what I want to do is I want to show 4 different paintings. I want to break down the edge quality. And the first one we're going to look at is Rule Lee. Rule Lee is an oil painter, and he does these beautiful wave paintings, right? And in this painting, you can see we have a variety of hard, firm, soft, and lost. I'm just going to break them down for you really quick. So here you can see that the textural quality of the wave, like the froth and the foam of the wave, or not the foam, but I don't know what you call it, the mist of the wave, right? Over here, we're getting these kinds of softer edges, right? And it's like a whole bunch of different softer edges, sometimes a little bit maybe harder, right? Maybe a little bit right there. I would say that's firm, definitely not hard, right? Where the light transitions in the shadow, we get another soft edge. But the rocks here, right, we can see that here is a very hard edge, but that's also due to the value contrast, right? So there we definitely feel that edge right there. Now, what I find most interesting about this painting is this part of the painting right here, which I love to analyze paintings like this, because a lot of times we think we need to render out every edge between every object needs to be seen in order to be a successful painting. But that's often not the case, right? because our eye actually doesn't pick up on every single edge. Our eye pushes things back and brings things forward a lot. So here, he's deliberately made that value choice to literally lose that edge between the wave and the sky, right? And so we can't see the edge of that wave, but it doesn't bother us because we see this part of the wave very clearly, right? So we have lost and found edges. So I thought that this painting was a really great exploration of all those kinds of edges that we see, from the edge of the wave to these rock formations right here where we have a harder edge, where we have, a softer edge transitioning in a shadow, all these kind of crisp bits, these textural bits, right, that also draw a little bit of a firmer edge, and that's what really gives that nice quality, texture, a visceral quality of the wave, I think. And so there's a lot of things happening in this painting. Now, another painting I want to show is by Stefan Kozlenikov, and he was this painting was done in gouache, right? And what I love about this painting is that it's almost kind of the opposite of the other one. And so I'm trying to show just a variety of paintings. Now, this painting doesn't have a lot of smudged edges, meaning what I mean is that if I were to, let me go to my tool presets and just choose a random smudge brush, it doesn't really have a lot of like smudging, right? Like here, like there's so many places I could potentially smudge, but it doesn't have a lot of that. Versus here, you could see that there's a lot of, lost edges right here. And another great example of smudging is, I'm going to pull up a painting by Kwang Ho, and I'm going to pull up a still life. I actually had it up and then I took it down because I thought maybe too many examples. But here you can see, here's a beautiful example of actually smudging, like in areas right there. He took the brush and just swiped it across to get that smudged feel, right? It's happening a lot in here, sometimes transitioning from light and shadow, but happening a lot even between this fruit and the sunflowers, right? So you can zoom in and really, really analyze that. But in this painting, none of that is happening, right? It's all quite crisp, I would say hard to firm edges, maybe the feeling of soft edges in other places, but even every branch is very clearly identified. And there's a lot of dark on light, light on dark silhouettes going on, right? And that's what makes this painting so strong. Now, a lot of times we think we need to have those painterly soft edges and lost edges, right? We love our lost edges to make a really interesting painting, but we don't always need that, right? We can have a perfectly crisp graphic painting, but our values have to be in check. So that's the main thing. So in this painting, right, if I turn it black and white, the values all check out. It's really beautiful. And we definitely get the focal point of the tree right in the middle. Our eye, it has supporting elements leading your eye up and around the painting, right? And so if I zoom in, it's a little bit low res, but you can really see that he's grouping through values such as the tree and the back trees right here, like these midground trees and the background trees. There's clear silhouettes going on, and the value structure is really nicely organized. Now, let's take a look at some digital paintings. So the first one I have here is by Michael Sutorik. I'm sorry if I butchered his last name, but this is an example of a digital painting where we have, again, all hard to firm edges, I would say. Very little soft edges, okay? So here, let me use a different brush. Right there we have, oops, that's very fat. We have some softness right there and right there, right? But overall, and right here as well. So it's not all hard edges, but overall, I would say like 3/4 of this painting, right? If I zoom in, it's like these beautiful abstract shapes on shapes of correct value. It's very beautifully abstract up close, which is what I personally love in paintings. And so, you can see that he has those soft edges in reflections, which is kind of necessary, and also in the clouds to really create that atmospheric perspective, right? But this painting is also very saturated in color. But if I turn it black and white, the values really check out. So that's what makes this piece work, right? It doesn't have to have smudged edges everywhere, and I can just duplicate it on Photoshop just to show you, like, you know, he didn't need to lose all, you know, maybe all this stuff right here. I'm trying to, of course it doesn't want to cooperate with me right now. Don't know why. But here, you know, we could have all these lost edges maybe in the foreground. I'm kind of smudging, not really in the right places. And I do believe there are right and wrong places to lose your edges, which is another topic for another time. But, you know, he could have done something like that to make it all painterly. And that lends to style, right? And different, you know, how you lose your edges also lends to stylistic reflection, but he didn't, right? And if I turn that off, it's a nice, beautiful hierarchy of big, medium, and small shapes. But the values work, right? Even this pink in the background, it feels very vibrant, but it's still a lighter value than all the darker blues and purples he has in the foreground, right? That's also lighter than the blues. And the sky is very saturated as well, but it's still lighter than this pink mass of buildings right here. So this is an example of where you don't have to lose all your edges, okay? And you can have mostly hard to firm edges, and a painting can still work. But let's look at something almost completely opposite in subject matter and also in edge quality. And this is Mang Lee. He has beautiful portraits and landscapes, and something I really love about his paintings is how he pushes that ambient light, right? That beautiful baby blue color and all his shadows, and also the beautiful bounce light, right? The warmer bounce light. And this painting is so magical and so just so engaging because I love all his the variety of edges, right? So you can see there's a hierarchy in edge control where he has crisp edges where the light is hitting that part of the form. So whether it be the hair, the neck, right? If we zoom in, we have a heart, we have oh sorry, I'm on the smudge brush. We have a hard edge right there, and we have a hard edge right there in the hair. We have a firm edge, I would say, right there, and some firm edges, you know, in the wrinkles of the outfit. And so those are where the firmer to harder edges are, right? And where he loses his edges is mostly in the shadow. And this is actually how I think about losing my edges and where to lose edges. So you can see here, the sleeve basically disappears into the background. Same with here, very, very soft to lost edge. Actually here in the light, he also softens that edge because the focal point is in the face. So he's creating a hierarchy that way. He's telling, I want you to look here, and even though this part is still in light, the focus is in right there. And that's really where he has all his crispest edges, right? There's textural quality in the brushwork, kind of a what do you call it? Like a raked brush almost here. Maybe a little bit right here. Some firm to soft edges right there in the shadow. So we're getting a kind of consistency where the softer edges are in the shadow and the firmer edges are where the light is hitting the part of the form, where the part of the form is hit by light, right? So like even these tiny shapes, I love to zoom in a painting, and I love to just find those really crisp, tiny shapes that really detail the form just a little bit more without really having to render anything, right? And that's really the trick. If you don't want to render things, like I'm not really into rendering, something to get around that is really understanding where to have your hard and soft edges, because when you lose edges, you're also grouping shapes, right? So if we go back to this first painting, when we're losing edges, we're essentially grouping the sky and the wave, and we're telling the viewer that's not as important. Maybe we don't need to look there. We can treat this all as one mass, right? We can group that area. I want you to look here where the light is hitting the wave, because that's where all the value contrast is and the edge variety is, right? So using edges is such a powerful, multifaceted tool that can help you dictate your focal point and also help you group things and help you push things in the background that you don't want the eye to go to, thus also creating your focal points, and they kind of tie into each other, right? So I thought this painting by Yu-Ming Lee was a great example of that. And there's so many other examples, right? I could pull up so many other ones, but what I encourage you to do is to start looking at the edge quality in paintings that you admire, whether it be digital paintings or traditional paintings, oil paintings, gouache paintings, and really study how a good artist handles their edges. Because like I said at the very beginning of this video, it can really make or break your painting. So if you liked what you learned and you want to learn more, I actually have a whole course on my website called Essentials of Painting, designed to teach you the core fundamentals of what makes a good painting so that you can make paintings that sing. It comes with an ever-growing library of 20 plus hours of content and demos in digital and gouache painting. And there's also homework briefs with each lesson so that you can do and practice the concepts on your own time. So if this is something that interests you, go ahead and go to my website at www.tiffaniemang.com, and I would love to have you join and love to hear what you think. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.